What's happening? You got the Retro Gaming Hippie, and today I'm coming at you with another console review of a system that I never owned back when it came out in 1986 of all times. I thought it came out a little bit later than that, but it didn't. I looked that up. It was a system I've never played before, and it is from the pioneers, in my opinion, of console gaming back then, and it is an Atari 7800 Pro system. Now, like I said, this was released in 1986 and would have set you back, I think it was 125, 150 bucks. So say that for what you will. It's got lots of cord to it, and I think that's really good to be able to sit back from the TV and sit on the couch back then and play it. It's lightweight and pretty sleek in design. The controllers, I dig these controllers. They're really nice and slim. They sit nicely in your hand here. They got two buttons. Most Atari games didn't have many more than that. The controller itself very responsive, and this top will rotate around, which I don't own a game that has a use for that. Perhaps there is one out there. But most of all, it's got lots of cord as well, which I think is really important to have lots of cord to be able to space yourself out and play a game in case you have a nice big setup or a large TV, even if it was a CRT back then. Now, being 1986, it would have been in competition with Nintendo, which had been out for roughly a year at that time, and Sega Master System around that time. So in terms of that, it really didn't bring anything that I own so far, the little bit of research I did, new to the table that competes with those. To me, it's more like a ColecoVision console, which is my favorite console from back then. In terms of what it does is it brings arcade games that you might play, classic arcade games, to the home console and does it really well, much like ColecoVision did. But it doesn't bring to you an RPG type of game, a Link, any games that have a huge amount of depth to them. From the little bit of research I did, of course, in the comments, tell me wrong. Maybe 7800 had some kind of role-playing game. I know the ColecoVision has Temple of Ashfai. I don't know how to say that right. I do own it. I haven't really fired it up and played it much yet, but that's some kind of like an RPG. But for the most part, it was bringing arcade games home to the console and doing it pretty well. So today I will fire up a few games to show you an example of what the console looks like, and I'll give you my final take on it. First up, we're going to show you a game that I used to play on the Commodore 64 that covers two of my favorite things from the 80s, video gaming and basketball, and it is one-on-one Larry Bird and Dr. J, which was preceded by, or followed by one-on-one Larry Bird and Michael Jordan on the Nintendo, which is not very good. But this is Larry Bird, Dr. J, two of my favorite 80s players, and I played this a lot on the Commodore 64. It's a simple one-on-one game. There's no three-point contest, dunk contest. It's simply one-on-one. We'll fire it up and we'll give you a look. Nice little music. You have some options, but we're not doing a game review. We're just kind of showing you what the 7800 did. And we will play as Dr. J. Now, you can call a timeout, and you can also shoot the ball. That's what your two buttons do. Now, my CRT doesn't really bring it well to life, but Larry's got a little mustache, blonde hair. He kind of looks like Larry Bird. He stole the ball from me. Doctor's got a little mustache and a little afro. And there's even fouls in the game. They call it hacking, which is something we used to coin a term on the playground. And you shoot free throws. So really, this reminds me a lot of what the Commodore 64 game looked like. So they did a pretty good job of interpreting this. One-on-one, Dr. J and Larry Bird. Larry's just hacking me out there. Next up, we'll do a side-by-side comparison. First, Miss Pac-Man Atari 2600, because the 7800 is backwards compatible to the 2600. That's kind of a nice little add-on to have in case you were a big 2600 fan and had a bunch of those games. Now, as you can see, it looks pretty good in my opinion. A good maze background for a 2600 game. The ghosts look pretty good and nice little music. Not too bad on the sound. Certainly an improvement on Pac-Man. But this is Atari 2600 Miss Pac-Man. And now we'll go to Atari 7800, Miss Pac-Man. Intro screen reminds me very much of what you would see in the arcade. Good music, just like the arcade. Good sound effects, good graphics, and really, I mean, this looks like the arcade game, but at home. All right, we'll shut this down and wrap up this console review. So there you have it. There's a look at a few games in the Atari 7800. Now, recently I read somewhere, and I didn't read a lot into it, but they're re-releasing the 7800 in maybe a smaller version. I don't think it had built-in games, but you could play your old 7800 games and 2600 games, I believe, and some developers were making new 7800 games. But I really didn't read a lot into it, but there's something about a new 7800 console coming out. Back then, overall, in my opinion, it does what it was supposed to do, which was bring the arcade games from the arcade to your home console, and it does it really well. So if you're an Atari fan and you're a retro game collector, I would definitely scoop up one of these if you've never played one of these before. I was glad I did at the deal I got. It's still not better than the ColecoVision, in my opinion, for back then, except for the original controllers are much better than the ColecoVision controllers, in my opinion. But you can always buy some aftermarket ColecoVision controllers that work much better. Trust me, I have quite a few. But I would definitely give the 7800 a thumbs up. It's a nice little system. It ports arcade games, it seems to be pretty well. I don't have a ton of them, but from the few I have, I would say it's definitely a thumbs up, which is what we'll give it. So remember, I'm the Retro Gaming Hippie. I don't buy nostalgia because I'm nostalgia. Y'all take care.